We are also watching a developing story in Chicago where the president is expected to make remarks in about an hour from now. We expect to hear him comment on gun control. This comes as we're learning about a bill introduced by a group of Democratic lawmakers in Missouri that could potentially turn thousands of legal, lawful gun owners into felons. The bill would ban assault weapons and other semi-automatic guns with what they call assault weapon features. And it would give gun owners 90 days to either get rid of, disable, or surrender to the government their currently lawful firearms. If they don't do it, the sheriff could come knocking at the door and confiscate them. It's not law now. It's just a bill that's been proposed. But Missouri's not the only state. Now we have word that Minnesota is pursuing a similar measure. Joining me now with reaction, syndicated radio host Lars Larson. Now, you're a gun rights advocate. I mean, this is the most sort of dramatic proposal we've heard, where even under the bills being submitted by, President Obama, Dianne Feinstein, you wouldn't have to go surrender your weapon to the feds. This would be something very different in these states.
Well, it is and it isn't, Megan. You'll remember that in your state of New York, they've already passed a law that demands that people give up guns, certain guns, manufactured and held by citizens in the state of New York within 12 months. So Missouri is a little more outrageous than that, turning ordinary citizens into criminals if they don't either surrender their guns to the authorities. It sounds like something out of a communist country or totalitarian state by the end of 90 days. And it really creates a problem because given that kind of law, the people in Missouri will say, well, I'll have to get rid of the gun. I'll take it to a friend of mine in another state and sell it to him. You can't do that legally. You have to go through a gun store. You have to get federal approval. It's a real complicated mess for both people in New York State and in Missouri, and it's outrageous. But, hey, taking away liberties and turning Americans into criminals, isn't that what our Democrat friends do best?
All right, but if you accept, and I know that this is a question for you, but if you accept that there is the legal right to curtail Second Amendment rights. It's not legally, I can tell you, it's obviously the right is not absolute. The Supreme Court has held you can pass gun control legislation. So if you assume they have the right to do that, the reason the 1994 assault weapons ban was so ineffectual, according to those who studied it, in part, was because, everybody stockpiled on the weapons before the ban went into place, and they were all grandfathered in. So if you had it, you didn't have to turn it over. So these guys are saying, all right, let's actually get rid of the ones that are out there. The weapons we lawmakers find problematic, we're not going to fall into that same trap. That's what they would argue.
Well, the problem, Megan, is a couple of things. You're right. Time, place, and manner, you're the lawyer, not me, can be regulated of most constitutional rights, including speech. But consider this as well. The lawmakers have decided that these are the problems. Let's use a real number. Last year in America, less than 300 people were murdered using rifles. This law is primarily aimed at rifles. I think it'll affect pistols as well in Missouri. So the lawmakers have decided the problem is rifles, but the statistics say the real problem is pistols if you see it as a problem. And the second thing is you're taking the pistols away from law-abiding citizens who will turn them in. Presumably the criminals in Missouri will hang on to their guns because they are already breaking the law by their very activity. So how is this going to change the situation? And I would disagree with you that the assault weapons ban would have been effective if it had confiscated guns. It's not the right thing to do to Americans. And one other piece of history, Megan, remember the British banned importation of arms to this country in 1774. They tried confiscation in 1775, and guess what happened in 1776?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You have to wonder how it's going to go if you have local law enforcement going door to door and demanding that, once lawful gun owners who now would be felons turn over their firearms. I mean, it's one of those things where you say, oh, what could possibly go wrong? A lot could possibly go wrong, and there is a real question about whether the bad guys who really don't want to have the guns are going to comply with this at all, Lars, if it passes.
You may have to wrap, but I want to ask you another legal concept. The Constitution says that if the government is going to deprive me, a citizen, of property, then it has to give me, 1, due process, and 2, compensation. Can Missouri constitutionally demand that people give up expensive property, guns, with no due process and no compensation? Is that legal? Is it constitutional?
That's a good question, one that will likely be litigated, although they're saying right now the odds of this passing in Missouri are not very good, Lars.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll continue to follow it. Thanks for being here.